Imagine a world where your words, your actual thoughts, are seen as so powerful, maybe even dangerous, that they become a threat to the state itself.
Yeah, it sounds like fiction, doesn't it? But it's not some made-up dystopia.
Not at all. It's the very real reality for one of the world's most, well, provocative and unflinching thinkers, Arundhati Roy.
Exactly. And today we're taking a real deep dive into her rebellious spirit.
Our mission really is to immerse you in her extraordinary life and her mind. She's a novelist, yes, but her artistry, it just blends so seamlessly with this fire of an activist.
We'll trace her journey, from a pretty challenging childhood to becoming this international literary star.
And then, crucially, we'll explore her fearless evolution, how she became this unyielding voice for justice, even when it puts her directly at odds with some really powerful forces.
And the timing now is just so compelling, isn't it? He gives us the perfect way to understand her.
It really does. Picture this. New Delhi, just a few weeks back, August 27th, 2025, warm evening. There's a crowd gathering for the launch of her new memoir, Mother Mary Comes to Me.
A very raw book, apparently.
Woo!
Gets right into her complex, powerful bond with her mother.
Yeah, but here's the thing, the striking contrast. Just weeks before that, early August, authorities over in Jammu and Kashmir actually banned her earlier book, Azadi.
Right. They labeled it, I think the quote was, promoting a false narrative and secessionism.
And it wasn't just a ban on paper. Police actually raided bookshops. It just highlights this ongoing critical battle, between free expression and state control.
And yet there she was at that launch, unflinching. She even said something that just sums it all up, didn't she?
She did. She reminded everyone why she writes. I write when it becomes harder to keep quiet than to write.
That really is her whole approach, isn't it? It captures everything.
So, what can you expect from us today? We're going to journey through her early years, her big breakthrough as a writer, those fearless dives she took into politics, and her latest really personal revelations.
We'll help you understand why, for Arundhati Roy, something like a dam isn't just about water or electricity.
Or why a single word like Azadi, freedom, can literally shake governments and, well, lead to book bans. This isn't going to be some dry biography, I promise you that.
No, definitely not. It's really a tale of rebellion, of love, and I think the human spirit just refusing to be caged.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Where do these seeds of rebellion really come from?
Well, her story kicks off on November 24th, 1961. She was born up in the misty hills of Shillong, Meghalaya. That's in northeast India.
Okay.
But most of her really formative childhood years were spent way down south in a small, pretty conservative town in Kerala, a place where, the social rules were just as rigid as the coconut palms you see everywhere there.
That early environment sounds like it was key.
Oh, profoundly shaping. Absolutely.
Yeah. And central to that shaping, you have to talk about her mother, Mary Roy. What a character she sounds like. A force of nature, people say.
Definitely. Tell us more about Mary. She was a Syrian Christian educator. That's a distinct ancient Christian community in Kerala with really deep roots and traditions.
Right. And she famously broke barriers for women's rights. Her legal battle in the 80s, it went all the way to the Supreme Court, didn't it?
It did. And it secured equal property rights for women in that specific community, the Syrian Christian community in Kerala. Just flew in the face of these really entrenched patriarchal norms.
So how did that defiance, her mother's fight, how did that specifically influence Arundhati? It wasn't just a legal win, was it?
No, much more than that. Mary's victory, it was this powerful symbol of, individual defiance against a really stifling system. Arundhati actually describes her mother as wild, imperfect.
Wild, imperfect.
Yeah, and someone who had the, quote, edginess of a gangster in that very buttoned-down environment. That image alone tells you so much, right?
It really does.
So that legacy, that spirit of challenging the status quo, of just not accepting what society tells you is okay, it became deeply ingrained in Arundhati herself. You can absolutely see how that spirit got passed down.
That makes total sense. But I guess Mary Roy's strength, it must have come with its own challenges, especially for Arundhati as a child.
Oh, definitely. Her father, he was a Bengali tea planter, and he was largely out of the picture after her parents divorced when she was only, 2?
Just 2, wow.
Yeah. So life with her mother and her brother Lalit, it was tough. Money was really tight, and the societal judgments, especially in that kind of town, were harsh.
She called it a fugitive childhood, didn't she? Constantly moving.
That's right, a fugitive childhood, moving from Assam to Uti, then down to Kerala. And she talked about this suffocating atmosphere where women basically had only one option, this kind of cloying virtue, or at least pretending to have it.
So what kind of resilience do you think that forced her to build, having to navigate all that fragmentation, that judgment?
Well, it definitely taught her self-reliance, for sure. But maybe more importantly, it gave her this really deep, visceral understanding of what it means to live outside the accepted norms.
It wasn't just theoretical for her.
Not at all. It was her everyday reality. And you see the result of that when she's just 16. She makes this huge decision to leave home, to actually escape those pressures.
16. Where did she go?
She moved to Delhi. And there she really had to forge her own path. We hear about her living in a squatter's colony.
Seriously, a squatter's colony.
Yeah. Surviving on odd jobs, apparently even selling empty beer bottles just to scrape by.
Living hand to mouth like that at 16. That must have been incredibly difficult. How do you think that stark experience, living right on the margins, how did that shape her view of inequality, not just intellectually, but like deep down?
Well, it wasn't just a personal struggle, was it? It was like this intense education in the raw edges of inequality. She didn't just see poverty, she lived it.
Right.
And that gave her this incredible lived empathy for anyone marginalized. It's a thread you just see running through everything she wrote later.
There's that quote in her memoir, too, isn't there, about leaving her mother?
Oh, yeah, it's powerful. I left my mother not because I didn't love her, but in order to be able to continue to love her. It says so much about needing to find your own space, your own identity, even if it's painful. Choosing self-preservation, maybe.
It really does. What a formative time. And then her path took some, well, unexpected turns after that, didn't it? Architecture school, film.
Yeah, kind of surprising on the surface. She trained as an architect at the School of Planning and Architecture in Delhi. And she even got into film for a bit. Acted in a movie called Masi Sahib back in '85.
And wrote a screenplay, too.
That's right. Wrote the screenplay for In which Annie gives those ones in 1989. It actually won a national award.
So how did these different things, architecture, film acting, screenwriting, how do they connect back to that inheritance of unrest you mentioned? That drive to question everything?
I don't think they were detours, really. More like different ways for her to explore her curiosity and find her voice. Architecture, it teaches you about structure, how things are built, both physically and, well, societally.
Okay, I see that.
And film, that teaches you about narrative, right?
Yeah.
How stories get told, how perspectives are framed. Both things would have sharpened her observation skills, her ability to kind of dissect complex systems.
So it all fed into her unique perspective.
Exactly. And her mother's legacy, that quote about the hunger that no food can fill and the thirst no water can quench, that became the engine, the drive to understand and then articulate these structures and narratives.
Right.
Whether it was through building designs or film scripts initially, it all funneled into what came next.
And what came next was huge. Let's fast forward to 1997. The literary world was, well, it was absolutely buzzing.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Arundhati Roy's debut novel, The God of Small Things, just exploded onto the scene, like a monsoon storm, as you said. It became this instant global sensation, sold millions of copies worldwide.
It really was a phenomenon. Set in Kerala, weaving this tragic, beautiful story of twins, Esta and Rahel.
Exploring all those themes, forbidden love, the deep scars of caste, family secrets, all set against this backdrop of communism and colonialism in Kerala.
And the style was so distinctive, wasn't it? That lyrical, non-linear way of telling the story. It felt so fresh, so alive, like memory itself.
Yeah, it really drew you in.
But what made it so special? How did it manage to tackle such complex, difficult things like the Indian caste system in a way that resonated so deeply with people all over the world without ever feeling like she was, lecturing?
Well, I think it was because she didn't use dry explanation. She showed it through these heartbreaking lived experiences of the characters. Take caste, for instance, such an intricate, often painful part of Indian society.
How does she approach that?
It was laid bare through that forbidden romance between Velutha, who's considered untouchable, and the twins' mother, Amu, who's from a higher caste. The novel didn't just tell you about caste divisions. It made you feel the devastating human cost, the suffocating power of it.
Through their story.
Exactly. It showed you the small, daily aggressions and the huge, life-shattering tragedies that come from such a rigid system, all through these deeply intimate, personal stories.
And then, of course, it won the Booker Prize that year. Huge deal. First Indian woman to win it. She was only 36. Instant global fame.
Massive achievement. But, success didn't seem to soften her edges or make her compromise her beliefs at all.
No, she even quipped about it, didn't she? Something like, people don't understand why one gets so upset.
Yeah, and why do I write? because it comes from a place of love. It comes from caring about something. That really says it all.
But even with all the acclaim, there was backlash, right? Pretty intense
Oh,
backlash.
yes, especially from conservatives back in Kerala. They accused the book of obscenity mainly because it depicted that intercaste intimacy. It actually led to a court case against her.
So right from the start, her writing provoked legal challenges.
Absolutely. And that was just the first of many legal battles she'd face over the years. She even ended up spending a symbolic day in TR jail later on for contempt of court during a protest.
And these challenges, they didn't silence her.
Quite the opposite, it seems. They only seemed to fuel her resolve, make her dig her heels in even more.
Which brings us to this really crucial turn in her career. After winning the Booker, she could have just kept writing novels, right? Live that comfortable literary life.
Easily. That was the expected path, probably.
So what made her consciously decide to hit pause on fiction for, what, 2 decades, and turn that powerful pen towards essays instead? What was happening in the world that made her feel she had to use a nonfiction voice?
She felt this profound sense of urgency. She saw the world, as she put it, burning. And she felt she just couldn't look away, couldn't only engage through fiction, no matter how powerful fiction can be.
The issues demanded something more direct.
Exactly. Things like nuclear proliferation, the forced displacement of people, massive economic injustice. These things demanded a direct, explicit kind of engagement that essays offered her. She felt she needed to speak truth to power, directly and unflinchingly.
She did eventually return to fiction, though.
Yes, with the Ministry of Utmost Happiness in 2017, which beautifully blends fiction with her activist spirit. But that initial 20-year break from novels, that was a very deliberate, very activist choice.
A powerful shift from imagination to reality, in a way. Her first big essay, The End of Imagination, back in '98, it was this blistering critique of India's nuclear tests. How did she frame that? What was her argument about the human cost?
She put it very plainly, really. Nuclear weapons aren't just some sophisticated bombs. They're a massive gamble with countless lives, especially in a volatile region like South Asia.
And she connected it to poverty, didn't she?
Yes, she highlighted how pursuing nuclear power completely ignored the plight of the poor, who always suffer the most in any conflict. It shifted precious resources away from basic human needs towards these instruments of mass destruction. Her focus consistently was on the human cost, the moral bankruptcy of taking that path.
And then came the Narmada Dam protests. That feels like a really pivotal moment in her activism.
It's hugely pivotal.
Because for many people, dams are symbols of progress, right?
Yeah.
Water, electricity, development. But Roy just shone this intense spotlight on the devastating human cost, particularly with the Narmada Valley project.
She did. In essays like The Greater Common Good from 1999, she meticulously laid out how these so-called development projects were displacing millions of people.
Billions.
Potentially, yes, across the entire project scope. She didn't just throw out statistics, though. She took you right into the lives of the people being affected.
Can you give an example of how she did that, how she made it real?
Absolutely. She described how entire villages, often indigenous Adivasi communities who'd lived on their ancestral lands for generations, were literally going to be submerged by the dam waters.
Just erase.
Erased. And she talked about how these people, who often had no formal legal claim to the land in the eyes of the state, were given totally inadequate compensation if they got anything at all, and then forcibly moved to unfamiliar, often barren resettlement sites.
So progress for some meant devastation for others.
That was her core argument. Her work showed how these huge projects, always framed as progress for the nation, usually ended up benefiting big corporations and cities, but at the terrible expense of the most vulnerable populations, destroying ecosystems and ancient ways of life in the process.
And she got personally involved, didn't she? She didn't just write from afar.
No way. She actively joined the protests on the ground. She faced arrest. And, as we mentioned, she even served that symbolic day in Tihar jail in 2002 because of a Supreme Court contempt charge related to the protests.
She put herself on the line.
She really did.
Yeah.
She even said, famously, the most dangerous place since the history of time has been writing. For her, the words and the actions were deeply connected.
She certainly didn't shy away from those dangerous places, metaphorically or literally. Her focus then seemed to widen out, didn't it, to global critiques.
Yes, she started examining globalization more broadly, looking at how big corporations exploit resources, how that widens the gap between the rich and the poor.
That book, Capitalism, a ghost story from 2014, she called capitalism a ghost story haunting India. What does she mean by that metaphor?
Well, for Roy, the ghost is the invisible but absolutely pervasive way that capitalism, especially its neoliberal form, works. How it operates to enrich this tiny elite while making poverty worse for the vast majority.
Operating in the shadows.
Exactly. It's a system that thrives in the shadows, she argues. It creates these illusions of opportunity while systematically dispossessing people of their land, their resources, their livelihoods. She points to how billionaires can flourish in India right alongside widespread, abject poverty. That stark contrast is the haunting reality, a reality that's often deliberately obscured. It's like the rules are rigged.
A powerful metaphor indeed. And she really did become this voice for the voiceless, didn't she? Going into the forests to meet Maoist rebels.
Yeah, trying to humanize their struggle against mining giants and walking with the comrades back in 2011, that was controversial too.
And then Kashmir, her essays in Azadi, freedom, fascism, fiction, published in 2020, just courageously questioning India's policies there, calling for dialogue instead of force.
And that's the book that just got banned in Kashmir recently.
Exactly. We know Azadi means freedom, but in the context of Kashmir, it's obviously a deeply loaded, politically charged word. How does Roy navigate that space between the state calling it secessionism and the local desire for self-determination?
That's precisely the tension her work explores. For the Indian state, yeah, secessionism implies this illegal anti-national act, a threat to sovereignty.
But for many Kashmiris.
Well, for many Kashmiris, Azadi, or self-determination, represents something else entirely. Aspirations for autonomy, for dignity, for having a say in their own future. And this is often voiced against a backdrop of decades of conflict and serious allegations of human rights abuses, thousands allegedly killed or disappeared.
So she highlights the disconnect.
She delves right into that complex, often tragic disconnect. She argues that simply suppressing the word Azadi, banning books that use it, only deepens the conflict. It doesn't resolve anything.
Right.
She points out how the state's narrative often ends up criminalizing what might just be a yearning for basic human rights and political agency.
It's clear she just dives headfirst into these incredibly divisive topics. She also draws a lot from B.R. Ambedkar, right? The great anti-caste icon in India.
Very much so. She's even edited his works, and she writes powerfully about how caste continues to operate, like this invisible chain limiting opportunities for so many, even today.
And her influence became global, too. Conversations with Edward Snowden about surveillance, John Cusack about politics.
Yeah, she connects these struggles globally.
Yeah.
And all this unflinching, unswerving writing, it earned her the Pen Pinter Prize in 2024. Well deserved.
But as you said, this kind of activism, it comes with a heavy price. She's been called anti-national, targeted by trolls, faced effigy burnings, even sedition charges.
It's intense. The attacks are constant and often very personal.
And what's her response to those critics, the ones who tell her to go to Pakistan or call her anti-Indian?
She has this really biting retort, doesn't she? She says something like, almost all the people who we call anti-nationals are the ones who actually care. And then the people who call themselves great nationalists, I can bet you that 99% of them are dodging taxes, have sent their kids to America, or are doing everything to make sure that what goes on in this country doesn't affect their personal wealth.
Oof. That's definitely sharp. It aims right at the perceived hypocrisy, tries to reframe who the real patriots are, in her view.
It certainly challenges their narrative head-on.
And that brings us right up to her latest work, where the personal becomes incredibly political. Now, at 63, she's turned inward with Mother Mary Comes to Me.
Launched right in the middle of the Azadi ban controversy. The timing feels significant.
It really does. A powerful reminder that these personal histories often fuel the political fire. The title itself, it hints at that Beatles lyric, maybe. But fundamentally, it's about her mother, Mary Roy, who passed away in 2022 at 89.
Yeah, it's this intimate look at that wild, imperfect mother figure who, as we discuss, so profoundly shaped Arundhati's own rebellion. The book apparently opens with Mary making this typically bold move. She chose September, that most excellent month, to make her move. Just signals that independent spirit right away.
And the memoir goes back to that fugitive childhood, filled with these incredibly raw emotional reflections, like maybe I pitched my tent where the wind blows strongest, hoping it would blow my heart clean out of my body. Wow.
And also, I learned early that the safest place can be the most dangerous. And that even when it isn't, I make it so. Just wrestling with safety and danger, even self-sabotage perhaps. We even learn about her finally meeting her estranged father when she was 25.
So how does digging into these really raw personal experiences, how does that connect to, or maybe even deepen, our understanding of her public activism, her political writing?
Well, I think this memoir isn't just her looking back. It's really an inspirational narrative showing how she became the person she is today, the activist we all recognize.
Right.
She says quite plainly, "I wasn't brave. I did not have a choice." It frames her courage not as some abstract virtue, but as this deep-seated necessity to speak out, a voice that was literally forged in the fire of her challenging personal history.
So the memoir is a bridge.
Exactly. Forms this crucial bridge. It shows how her mother's fierce public fight for property rights echoes Arundhati's own lifelong battles against all kinds of injustice. It really underscores that her writing, her activism, it comes from this place of intense feeling love, actually.
Yeah.
Love for justice, for people, for truth, not from hate.
And the cover image, a young Roy blowing smoke.
Yeah, it perfectly captures that daring, defiant spirit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
An outward sign of that inner fire that the memoir seems to explore.
So Arundhati Roy's life, it's just this vivid tapestry, isn't it? Triumphs, yes, but also these relentless trials. The Azadi ban, the police raids, what some call a war on memory.
Yeah.
These are really stark reminders of the ongoing fight against censorship, against silencing dissent.
Absolutely. Yet she persists. Like that Rumi quote she sometimes references, "I have put duality away, I have seen the two worlds as one." Her voice just continues, like a beacon maybe, in a world that's full of echo chambers.
And she keeps pushing us, doesn't she, to question the very systems we live in. She said, democracy no longer means what it was meant to. It has been taken back into the workshop.
That's such a great line, and what's really fascinating is that, for her, silence is never safety. Silence is the real danger. She talks about fleeing the safety that suffocates me. She's always compelled to seek out the difficult truths, even when it's risky.
So as the dust settles from the Azadi ban and her new memoir, Mother Mary Comes to Me, finds its readers starting September 2nd, 2025, Arundhati Roy just continues to inspire millions to question power, whether it's about dams or democracy or identity.
Her work forces us, really, to confront uncomfortable truths, both the big global ones and the deeply personal ones.
So what does this all mean for you, listening to this?
Well, her entire body of work, I think, from that lyrical, stunning fiction to these piercing, razor-sharp essays, it's really a profound invitation.
An invitation, how so?
It's an invitation not just to read her words or listen to her speak, but to truly dive in yourself, to question everything you're told, to look beyond the easy headlines.
It's a call to critical thinking.
Exactly. It's an invitation to cultivate your own critical eye, your own perspective, and perhaps, just perhaps, to find your own voice and feel empowered to speak up when, for you, it becomes harder to keep quiet.